What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and welcome back to the 32-team 7-round mock draft series. Thank you for stopping by on a beautiful Saturday. Not the only upload on the channel today as well. There's a new rebuild. I don't know if it's coming out after this mock draft, before this mock draft, but check the channel. Stay tuned to the channel. But today, we're going to be taking a look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team that holds the 5th overall pick in this upcoming draft, and we're going to try and help them out a lot because they are not going through a rebuild, even though some people like to think it is. I think with the coaching staff, I love the Bruce Arians hire. I feel like if anyone is going to be able to develop Jameis Winston, Bruce Arians can, and if he can't, probably best to move on from Jameis Winston. I love the hiring of Todd Bowles as a DC. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I've been kind of harping at the Eagles to maybe look at Todd Bowles if he was willing to come in and run a 4-3. But what we do know about Tampa is that he's going to be running a 3-4, and I'm looking at their defense, and I'm seeing a defense that has not a lot of 3-4 players, and we're going to try our best in this draft to make it so it's not an all-out rebuild and mitigate that change in defensive switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4. So with that being said, jumping into pick number 5 in the first round, this might be, I don't know how people really take my mock draft so far. There's only been any surprise picks, but I haven't seen this one a lot, and to me it makes a lot of sense. At pick number 5, I am selecting Montez Sweat, outside linebacker from Mississippi State. Bucs are switching to a 3-4, and I'm looking at the roster. They have one 3-4 outside linebacker on the roster in Shaquil Barrett, who they signed from the Denver Broncos. Shaquil Barrett's a player that a lot of people in Madden know about because he's always a free agent, was a high, 80 overall linebacker, but in real life hasn't really established himself as a proven starter. So there's some question marks over that. You look at the rest of the linebackers, Kendall Beckwith, inside linebacker. Deion Buchanan, inside linebacker. Levante David, inside linebacker. Looking at all of their depth, inside linebackers. You look at outside. JPP, if he stays on the roster, he's going to probably be hand in the ground playing as a defensive end. He got traded from the Giants to the Bucs because the Giants were switching to a 3-4, and they didn't really find him as a scheme fit. So I'm really surprised with what they're going to do here on that defensive line. I assume you'll take Gerald McCoy and play him at defensive end. You'll have Vita Vea as a nose tackle. Maybe get Bo Allen as a defensive end, nose tackle. You got Carl Nassib, Noah Spence. It's just really weird. I don't really see a lot of those guys being easy and simple transitions to a outside linebacker role. So, there's, wait and see, I guess. But to get a proven 3-4, Montez Sweat was a guy coming into this draft. He was a top 15 talent on my board. He's not one of those guys that dominate the combine, came out of nowhere, and then I'm just going to drastically start overvaluing him. He had a lot of proven production in the SEC for multiple years with Mississippi State. I thought enough so that, there's concerns maybe about how he could affect the run, and then he had an outstanding Senior Bowl. And then he followed it up coming into the combine at 6'5", 260 pounds, running a 4.41, and then all the other drills just being godlike. Just godlike. Maybe the most impressive combine we've ever seen from a defensive end. So you pair that with the fact that I already had him as a top 15 talent, it's only going to push him up the board more. And when you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they need to get better. There's not going to be a starting 3-4 outside linebacker at any of these other picks unless they plan on trading up. I don't think it's that much of a reach at all to select Montez Sweat at number 5, given how good of an athlete that he is. Now, there was a heart condition thing that popped up. I don't know how similar it was to Maurice Hurst, but I don't think teams are going to make as big of a red flag to this heart issue that seemingly is gone and past Montez Sweat. Because you saw Mo Hurst, he was a first-round talent D tackle out of Michigan last year, went to the 5th round to the Oakland Raiders, and was debatably the best rookie the Raider had last year. So, I think teams are maybe learning from that mistake, not to, be too overly cautious, because more often than not, it's good. And once the doctor gives the okay, I think Montez Sweat, regardless of if you think him going to Tampa at 5 is a reach or not, I think he's top 10. I would be very shocked to see if he lasts, past the top 10. And I think it's a perfect spot, a perfect fit for that defense here in Tampa Bay. And in reality, this Bucs team offensively was very, very good last year. I don't think there's going to be too much of a change. Bruce Arians can call one hell of an offensive game plan. Their defense is what needs to step up. And you're adding even more pressure onto things by switching the scheme. We're going to go defense heavy here in this mock draft. Going to pick number 2 in the second round, pick 39, I was selecting Amani Oruwariye, cornerback from Penn State. Their secondary was not great. You have Carlton Davis, who was a second-round pick in 2018. He's still developing. MJ Stewart was a second-round pick in 2018. He's like a DB hybrid. I think maybe his best football could be ahead of him at the safety spot, but it is what it is. You got Vernon Harrell, Florida Gator, who was a first-round pick in 2016. Again, kind of hasn't really lived up to the billing, to be completely honest with you. I think I personally hope that he can still turn it around, but I don't think a lot of Buck fans have a lot of confidence in him turning it around. And outside of that, I mean, Brent Grimes is a free agent. He's super old. It was about time to get, the new replacement. But that secondary was giving up so many big plays last year. So getting a guy like Oruwariye, who I think is a legitimate first-round caliber talent, but maybe because the play, the actual product on field for Penn State wasn't as high as some of the other corners, he'll still be available here at the top end of the second round. He's a long, fluid cornerback, and I feel like, with Todd Bowles as a DC, with that defensive background, he's going to see like a guy like Amani Oruwariye that has a very high ceiling and say, yes, I can develop that guy into a legitimate outside starting corner, a shutdown corner. And that is something that, outside of, some big time play, some great stretches by Brent Grimes that the Bucs just really haven't had since like maybe that 1 year that they had Darrelle Revis, and even then, I don't know if Darrelle Revis was still playing at that high level like he was with the Jets. So I think Oruwariye in the second round helps out a secondary that drastically needs to get better and really has failed to address the position here in free agency. And then moving into the third round at pick 70, going back with Penn State, I am selecting Miles Sanders, running back from Penn State. Miles Sanders absolutely killed the combine, probably the biggest riser at the running back position. Many people know him as Saquon Barkley's backup, but he looked pretty damn explosive last year for Penn State. And because he was Saquon Barkley's backup, you're seeing a guy that has a lot of upside, has a very high ceiling, and doesn't have the wear and tear that some of these other running backs that have been starters for 3-4 years have. So maybe there's a little bit of concern about the production there. I don't think that's too big of a worry. I think Miles Sanders is, if you're trying to look for value at the running back position, there might not be a better value in this draft than Miles Sanders. Maybe Rodney Anderson, but again, you have that whole thing. Can he stay healthy? The injury concerns, Miles Sanders doesn't really have that. When you look at the running backs in the backfield in general with Tampa Bay, there's a lot of question marks here. You have guys that are like just a guy in Peyton Barber, like he's an all right guy. You got Andre Ellington for the familiarity, I think, with Bruce Arians, but ultimately he's kind of capped out a little bit. He's had some struggles in staying healthy. You got a second round pick last year in Ronald Jones, who really didn't do a whole lot, and we haven't found many reports. I was trying to look at this like Bruce Arians having confidence in Ronald Jones, something like that. It could be one of those guys that he was the old regime's running back, and Bruce Arians just like, you know what, let's try to trade him. He might get cut. I mean, Ronald Jones was terrible last year. I drafted him in all my fantasy leagues expecting him to be all right, and he did absolutely nothing. So I'm going on the assumption that Ronald Jones might not be in the plans of Bruce Arians and the Bucs going forward. So getting a guy like Miles Sanders, I mean, just in general, you need to find a running back. This is an offense that needs to find some balance. You can't have all that pressure on Jameis Winston's shoulders. We've seen him crumble under pressure before. He's not the kind of quarterback that gets better the more times he throws in the games. He usually gets worse. That's where he starts to get sloppy with the ball. You want to keep Jameis Winston around that 25 to 30 passes a game and find some sort of balance in the run. And they don't really have, I don't think, a running back unless there's something that we're missing with Ronald Jones on that roster. I'm not saying a third round pick is supposed to come in and complete this offense, but I think getting a value like Miles Sanders that has that upside to potentially do that, it is too much of a not risk using a third rounder to potentially get a running back that can complete this offense. And also I think because, like I said, it takes the pressure off Jameis Winston, a good running back could help Jameis Winston develop into the quarterback many Bucs fans hope Bruce Arians can make him into. And then from that, we're going into the fourth round, pick 107. I am selecting Zach Allen, defensive end from Boston College. With this switch to 3-4, I think Zach Allen's a very nice value here in round 4. He was a guy that a lot of mock drafts earlier on, like maybe last year in college football, had Zach Allen as a first round, like a late first round talent. Hasn't necessarily helped himself out at the Senior Bowl. I guess he didn't look very good. He didn't really stand out much at the combine, so much showing like a limited athlete. And right now there's big questions and concerns about where he fits in the NFL. Is he going to be a 3-4 end? Is he going to be an outside linebacker? Is he going to be a 4-3 D tackle? I think he's going to be best suited as a 3-4 end. In his career, 3 years at Boston College, 200 tackles, 40 TFLs, 16 sacks, and 14 pass breakups. So he can get his hands up there, affect the pass just a little bit. I think he has enough athletic talent to be a rotational 3-4 defensive end. And again, I don't know what's going on with this defense. Like, are they going to keep JPP? Are you going to make Joe McCoy like a 3-4? And like, there's just so much uncertainty there. I think a guy that clearly, in my opinion, will fit into a 3-4 right away and will find a way not only to land on the final 53. Like, obviously, you're drafting them in the fourth round. You hope they're going to be able to get some production here. But I think he'd be a nice piece to a rotational front here for Todd Bowles and really good value in the fourth round. So moving into the fifth round, 145, I'm selecting Tristan Hill, defensive tackle from UCF. I think he has the frame to develop into a traditional nose tackle. He came at the combine, I think, 308. So he'd be roughly about 315 at playing weight. Ran a 5.040, 28 reps on the bench press. I think Vita Vea showed last year. I mean, I think Vita Vea is going to be an outstanding fit as a nose tackle in this front, but he struggled to stay healthy last year, and maybe there's going to be some concerns. Maybe at the very least there's concerns about your depth in case that happens. Right, you got Stevie T. He's probably like the only other true nose tackle on that roster. I think a guy like Tristan Hill, because of his athletic talent, you could probably be pretty flexible with him on that 3-4. You could have him line up as a defensive end. You could have him line up as nose tackle. Just another key piece here to a team that I just think they need more fits, more scheme fits on this defense that I'm just not really seeing right now. And rather trying to gamble that Todd Bowles can just, make all these like outside linebackers and defensive ends really, really fluid, get some guys that are actually scheme fits. And I think Zach Allen in the 4th round, Tristan Hill in the 5th round is a excellent way at going about that. And when you really look at Tristan Hill, you're saying like 315, okay, so he's built like a nose tackle, running really fast. Like, why isn't he being talked about like Dexter Lawrence? A lot of scouts, for whatever reason, obviously, I don't really know, but it seems like a common trend in his scouting reports is that there are some attitude issues there. So for a guy that might be pushing, 3rd round talent, 4th round, we'll gamble on the 5th round that Bowles and Arians can get him to put it all together and be a team player. Moving into the 6th round where they have 2 picks. First up at 197, I'm selecting Keelan Doss, wide receiver from UC Davis. This was a very high potent offense last year with a big part to their wide receivers, but they lost to Sean Jackson on the outside. I think that's fine because they have Chris Godwin that can step up. Perriman, they brought in Brashad Perriman, who actually had some pretty good spot play with the Browns last year, but who's going to fill that slot void that's left by Adam Humphries? And when you look at Keelan Doss, a lot of people want to call him a poor man's Keenan Allen small school 2.0. I think for a big slot, you're not going to get better value here on day 3. He absolutely looked great in the Senior Bowl, was definitely outshining some of the more bigger names that were attending there. And like I said, when you have Evans and Godwin on the outside, I think Keelan Doss fills that void in the slot of Adam Humphries. And anytime that the Bucs aren't going to want to run in 12-man personnel, anytime they don't want to just have O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate, Godwin, and Evans on the field, you throw in a guy like Keelan Doss across the middle, it's going to make a lot of mismatches for that offense and continually have them just really in general operating on a high level like they did last season. Going to the 2nd 6th round pick, we have 208 Dakota Allen, linebacker from Texas Tech. Obviously, a lot of people might know him from Last Chance U fame, but I think a guy like Dakota Allen absolutely killed his hype with a very poor combine. His tape looked like he was an elite sideline-to-sideline linebacker, great coverage traits, which therefore you assume that he's going to be, because he is like 230, that he was going to be, more so in the territory of like the Devin Bushes and Devin Whites, that 4.4, 4.5, probably was more so gambling 4.5, and he ran like almost 4.7 and all that stuff. So you're going to gamble that the tape, the tape is what it is. You know what I'm saying? He's going to be a guy that's not, maybe doesn't run great in a straight line or maybe, like outside of pads might not be the greatest athlete. But when he puts the helmet on, he uses his instincts and his IQ to just make these plays that where he may have athletic limitations, you might kind of doubt that he can make those plays. Kind of similar maybe to Mack Wilson from Alabama, where Mack Wilson is strong in coverage, but he's not a great athlete, not a great twitchy linebacker athlete like we're seeing a lot in today's NFL, where it's pretty much glorified safeties that are playing linebacker. But I think Dakota Allen would be really nice inside linebacker depth behind Levante David and Dayon Buchanan. Maybe challenge Kendall Beckwith just a little bit, but I never think when you're switching here, looking at his linebackers, you can never have more than enough depth. And I think a guy like Dakota Allen comes in and helps solidify said depth. And then finishing the draft in the 7th round pick, 215, I'm selecting Ryan Finley, cornerback from NC State. I really just view this as good value. Ryan Finley at one point in time was considered a first-round QB, maybe a guy that was an ideal scheme fit for New England, take over for Tom Brady. But then the more and more you looked at his tape, the more and more you saw definitely the limitations that could potentially not have him get drafted. I think if you're sitting here in the 7th round, you view him as an emergency quarterback. If Bruce Arians can't develop Jameis Winston, Ryan Finley in the 7th round is really killer value. He's an accurate passer. He can make a lot of plays, especially with how good and talented this wide receiver core is. Hey, he might be able just to have those guys elevate his play and be somewhat decent. I mean, just in case Jameis Winston wants to take an Uber ride down to the seafood market, Real trigger warning for Tampa Bay Bucs fans. I think best case scenario, if Jameis Winston does develop, Ryan Finley is a high upside backup in what they lost in last year's, I don't know what you want to call him. I don't even know. Literally, that is how you describe whatever the hell Ryan Fitzpatrick did last year. So you just have that cover behind Jameis Winston. They don't really have it right now in Ryan Griffin and Joe Callahan, but I think Ryan Finley in the 7th round could very well be that security net that Bruce Arians may want. So there you go, guys. That is the 7th round mock draft for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As always, if you're a Bucs fan in particular, let me know in the comment section below how you liked this mock draft. Do you agree or disagree with any of the picks? As always, your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button, smash the like button if you enjoyed. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.